I didn't remember all those things I had said about myself, but yeah, that's the truth of my life today. So looking out at all of you, you don't have to raise your hand. I was a teacher for many years and continue to be so. But how many of you want to live your life in a magical way, in a different way? In spite of the circumstances or appearances that you may see in front of you, or feel in front of you, or perceive. Sometimes I perceive things that aren't even there. Oh, my talk. So you were right, Lillian. I didn't need my paper trail here, but thank you. I really am blessed to be up here, and every time I volunteer to come up here, thank you, Reverend Bonnie. It's with great angst that I work on this, and then I step aside, and Spirit fills me and tells me, get out of the way. Get out of the way, and I had to do that also in my life. I didn't celebrate my anniversary in December. I have been doing that since I walked in the door, and I think it's because I'm just so blessed to be and feel at home all the time that anniversaries are no longer important, that I feel one with all of you, and so thinking, power of thought, that's the chapter 8 out of Science of Mind, and that big skinny little book that we have. But I do, before I start onward, there are many other much skinnier books that Ernest Holmes wrote that really have helped me understand. When I first got here, I opened up the Science of Mind and thought I'd read from page 1 onward and felt a little confused. And so what I know is that he was able to reach me in many different forums. So visit our bookstore if you are interested in a different kind of reading. Back to basics of transformation through thought. Yes. So I had to look at that, my thought. I think all the time. I don't know about any of you, but I think, and then sometimes I don't need to be thinking. But what has happened to me since I walked through the doors here, and even before, because you see, my life runs through the principle. Whether I know the principles of new thought, of life, right? The law of life, the law of thought. Whether I knew what they were called, my life was using those. Just like before I knew about the law of electricity, it was there, right? That's a go-to. We always use that law of electricity. But, I didn't, and I still don't really know how it works, but I know that when I flip the switch, the light turns on. And so regardless of what I knew before I walked in the door, the law of life was working. The magic of life today is that since I've been here, I've been able to study and to understand how I can be behind the driver's seat of my life to get to that dream or that vision that I see for myself. And today, the dreams and visions that I see for myself is so much different than March last year when I just wanted to knit as my dream for Prosperity Plus, right? So it's my dreams are constantly changing, and along with that, my thoughts have to change as well. That is one of the basic teachings. That is the first thing I had to learn when I walked through the doors of religious science, is I had to be willing to start changing my thoughts. And so going back to Reverend Bonnie's talk from last week, good reminder that we need to listen with new ears. So what I share with you about what I do that impacts changing my thought to a higher frequency to continue spiraling upward, it's not going to be new stuff, right? Like, these are principles and practices that I learned the names for when I walked in and I continue to study. But it's how do we use those? Today, I can apply those to my life. So I have to always be willing to hear with new ears. And for me, it's not just January. It has to be on a daily basis. I can change my life in March, believe it or not. I can change my thinking in July. And sometimes I need to in July when it's a little warm here, right? Even though I was raised here. But I have to be willing to understand that those changes, that being willing to step to the next frequency, to continue that vibration, happens at any time in my life. I was thinking about, I think a lot. And Louise Hay came up. So I ran across Louise Hay way before I knew anything about all of you people, right? And through affirmations. I had the vast collection of self-help books in my house. I'm also in recovery for alcoholism, and I was trying to find a better, easier, more Theresa way to change my life. So I just had lots of self-help books in my house. But Louise Hay was one that found her way onto my bookshelf, and I learned about affirmations out there in the world, and not realizing the impact that they would have in my life. And so that's how my teaching has been, how my development has been. Things have happened in my life that I had no control over, and luckily did not know enough to get in the way. And so I need to be able to listen with new ears anytime that the opportunity provides for a shift in the way that I think. I haven't been to Reverend Bonnie's house to get a soup of can out of her pantry yet. But I love that idea, right? So we can know principle, but it's about applying principle in our lives. And I was thinking, if I went and got that can of soup from Reverend Bonnie's pantry, what I also needed to do was to get a can opener, right? And I need to open the can, and then I need to be willing to pour it out, to warm it up, to put that energy behind the thought in order for it to really start flowing in my life, to really allow that can of soup, that can of principles, the law of life, to start flowing and growing within me, to start spiritually feeding me, nurturing me, right? That nutrition. So I just love that idea, because I can hold on to thought. I read lots of books, and I can hold on to those thoughts, but until I'm ready to allow them to flow out of me, to raise my vibration, to see what the possibility in my life can be, then I might as well just not even follow that can out of the pantry. And so I want to partake of the spiritual nutrition of the law of life, the law of thought. Because if I continue to grow and nurture my thoughts to help them grow and expand my consciousness, that's when my life is going to change. I wish I could tell you that every day I feel like this. I hibernate in December, and I'm like this. Someone told me last week, I was worried about you. I haven't seen you in weeks. And, of course, my smart poopy answer is, well, come by my house, give me a call. But I do. There are times when I just go within in a way that may or may not be spiritually healthy. But I have decided to also accept who I am. And the truth is that I go through cycles. My life is a cycle, and I need to embrace that. And here I am. Here I am in front of you today to share my experience with what do I do to help change my thought. Like, that to me is the essence of this teaching, of this philosophy. I went to the Science of Mind dictionary to look up what Ernest, how he defined power and thought, right? Because we're talking about the power of thought. And so the definition that he gave it was that power is the energy by which everything lives. And it took me back to the energy behind thought. And that thought is a movement of consciousness, the mental awareness. And so what I want to do is I want to put that energy behind my thoughts. The magic is that I get to choose and work on what those thoughts are. Because those thoughts is what we put into first cause, which then goes into our subconscious, everything we know about life or perceive life, and then that's what we create. And that's basically the teaching symbol behind me. But I will tell you that in 20 minutes, I will not be able to share everything I can understand right now about this teaching and how it can change your life. I can share what I do to help change my life with this teaching. But we will be teaching Beyond Limits in March, Science of Mind 101. And so I invite all of you. I've taken it twice, and I took foundations because I had different ears all those 3 times. I continue to learn new things. I retake classes in this teaching because in that way I know that I have those tools, that perception, the knowledge, the big T, to help me continue to grow. Because the more I grow through myself, my higher self, the higher vibration I have, the higher frequency, it definitely impacts my life, but it impacts the life around me, and it impacts our community, and it impacts the world. And so, yes, one single person, I believe, can change the world. From this little center here in Las Cruces, each and every one of us can do one thing, one act that radiates out. How many people do we come into contact with every day? And how many people, it's just, when I stop to think about it, I see the mathematician right here, but when I stop and think about, right, how that grows, I am in awe. But we were put here to have that human experience, grounded and founded in love. And so I feel my job, regardless of whether I'm in the classroom or I'm volunteering, I'm teaching a class here, that my gift is that I radiate the most and best I can so that you or people around me can do that. Okay, so I need to bring myself back. So what I absolutely know is that we each have the power within us, right? Greater than anything we can even imagine, to get through, to change whatever the conditions are that we come into contact with, right? Any obstacle in our experience, like each and every one of us has that opportunity. I've been I'm 60 years old, so I've lived a few years, but I have seen how people have changed their lives. And you know what's interesting to me, not that I'm trying to encourage people not to come to service, but I've seen people, right, because this law works for all of us, regardless of whether we're religious scientists or visitors in this center, but change their lives when they can connect and tap into that inner self of who they are, and they start seeing that for themselves. And so I know, absolutely know, that the way my life has changed in the last 3 years is not just because it's me. The power is there for all of us. It's about doing the work. It's about taking that can of soup off the pantry shelf, the principles that we have learned, and being willing to apply them to our lives. Some days are easier than others, but what I get to experience, so even on those days that I might label as bad days, at the end of the day, when I turn within and I go to that place of gratitude, even though it might be a little more difficult, I could never have imagined the life I have today. And it's not because I live in $1 million home or I drive a big fancy vehicle or, I have diamonds on my fingers. It's beyond the material. It's the relationships I have with people, with my own family. The fact that I can step back from my own family and let my kids live their lives, which is, yeah, anyway. A great feat for those of you who have helped to raise children. But it's a sense of serenity and peace. And so that's the whole gift for me, is learning how to use my thoughts and what I put into myself to continue to go upwards vibrationally and the frequency. And when I see myself going back down, because I'm having a bad day or someone hasn't done something that I thought they should do in the certain way that I think they should be doing, and then finding out that even when I step in, it still happens the way it's supposed to happen, that I can work on that and get myself back up. I no longer stay in the dark so often, the shadow part of my life, which I fought for years that I didn't have a shadow part of my life, but I finally decided, oh, yes, I do. I do. And so if I want to change my life, if each and every one of you truly want to see, regardless, thank you, Lillian, for your reading. I told Lillian that was my talk, and then the song, followed on. So, and I still found stuff to talk about up here. But if you truly want to change your life, right? I used to always say also in class, oh, I have everything I want. I don't need to do a spiritual mind treatment. I don't want more stuff. And then I was taught that the more stuff I have, whether it's peace, serenity, compassion, kindness, a big bank account, time to tithe out in the community, that it really wasn't just about me. Once again, the more that I grow and expand, the more the world does, right? The more the world does. And so I'm going to make the assumption, sorry, Don Miguel Reese, but that all of you are here to hear something to take home with you so that you can have a different life. Even though you may think right now you have everything you need, it's not about need, it's about wanting to continue to grow our conscious, right? Consciously. To expand, I have to share this thought. It just came out of the divine. But so, if the Big Bang Theory, and I'm not a scientist, so this is, I was a kindergarten teacher for many years, so that's where I come from, but is expanding, that means each and everything within that infinite is expanding. My goal or thought for me is the Marianne Williamson quote, right? It's not that I'm in fear of failing. I'm fearful about that expansion of myself, the bigness that I am. I'm paraphrasing, but so if we want that today, we want that magic in our life. And what I do know also is, I have a quote here from Ernest Holmes, that the mind is a magnet and we attract that which we identify with. In order to get the most out of life, we must learn consciously to change many of our habitual thought patterns. This is not easy, for our old thought patterns cling to us with great tenacity. But being thought patterns, they can be reversed. If you are filled with fear, refill yourself with faith, for faith always overcomes fear. So if we're magnets, and we know what we want, then we have the opportunity to shift where we are to attract what we want more. Where we focus, where we tend to give our focus, right, is that's what we're going to bring in. And how that works, I can't give you a mathematical equation, but I know it works. It's all law of life, law of thought. I'm actually working with a life coach right now, a Mary Morrissey Dream Builder life coach, and boy, there's a lot to learn about myself. But until I am willing to start changing how I think about myself and the world around me, not much is going to change. If I continue to think small, probably going to attract things that are not going to help me expand. Mary Morrissey says that we live by design or default. And so today, because I understand a little bit about how principle works and what I need to do, I'm able to design a different life. For many years, even the last 12 years, I've lived by default. Oh, whatever comes, I'm fine. This, I'm perfectly happy with this. Not realizing that the more I grow, the more this community, this planet, this divine, infinite dimension that we're in grows as well. And so what do I do? What have I done? And what do I remember to do, right? If I truly want to change my thinking because I know it's going to change my life, if I truly believe that my thoughts are in control of my experience, and if I truly believe that I can be the director of my life in this instance by and through my thoughts, what are some of the tools that I've used to do that? And so, ever the good teacher, I had handouts for all of you. And so the bookmarker I actually got at the CSL conference when we went, 4 or 5 years ago. And so the principles are on one side. And I got to laminate and cut. If any of you have ever taught and laminated stuff, man, it was good therapy yesterday. And then the half sheet. Someone came up to me recently, and they come to service, but they haven't taken a class yet, Beyond Limits in March. And so when we stand up here and we talk about the spiritual mind treatment or affirmative prayer, which we talk about every week, they didn't quite understand what that was. And I will tell you that I took several classes through many years before I actually understood. And I'm still learning about, the way I pray today is different than the way I prayed in July. So, or did mind treatment, right? That spiritual, that revealing the truth, that shifting in my life and my thoughts, right? In alignment with the one universe. And so Santa Rosa, the CSL of Santa Rosa had a cute little graphics, and so I included that. And also one thing that I remember as a newcomer, and I used that newcomer label for many years until I was reminded by Lorna Harris that I'd been here and I was no longer a newcomer, so I had to take that newcomer hat off. But still, it's the religious science core beliefs. And so it reminded me a little bit of my Catholic upbringing, but it also helps me understand when people are up here talking about religious science, what Ernest Holmes and his entourage mean and meant, and how that impacts our lives today. So this is another way how my life flows. I get to listen to Mary Morrissey every week for an hour, and then I talk with my life coach, and I realize how much more work I need to do. But I have been thinking about today's talk since November. The last time I spoke here, I pledged that I would never speak again. And in November, I went to go see my big sister, and she said, "So when are you speaking again? I really enjoyed those videos." She lives in a place where she studies religious science on her own and through the internet. And I think I may have even texted Bonnie immediately because that's I have to be willing to listen. So as I was preparing for today, and there's so much behind the power of thought. There's so many stories of how this principle has impacted not only my life, but I see my son uses it. Well, we all use the principle whether we know it or not or are willing to accept that fact. But to see those God stories pop up, or that my daughters call me when they need prayer, though they don't see that that's what they're doing, right? So Wednesday morning, I click on to Mary Morrissey, and her entire 40 minutes is on the power of thought, how to change your thinking. You want a different life? Well, let's go back to the basics. And her basics on Wednesday morning was a spiritual mind treatment. She calls it the 5-step thinking process. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I know, I've seen that before. That's affirmative prayer. Those are the training wheels that we're given when we start in this study. to make the most of what we are communicating with the universe, to make the most of how we're shifting from where we are to where we want to be, to revealing the truth once again of who we are. And so I felt like I was right up there. And I do want to, I've had some amazing teachers since I walked in the centers, and the teachers include the people that have been in my classroom, in my classes as colleagues, or students as I facilitate. I've had they've made me grow, and they continue to make me grow. And some people ask me questions, and I used to answer, but today I realize that sometimes it's just about taking it to heart and figuring out how that works in my life. So Mary Morrissey also had my talk ready for me today, and she, and which I know, but I don't know how I go to prayer whenever a difficult situation comes up, and I'm not even aware that I'm doing it because I'm not, parking the car and trying to remember the 5 steps because we have used it for so long. It's like the lesson plan template I used to use when I taught. After a while, it's so ingrained that I turned to this powerful practice. And a couple of Mondays ago, I had, as one example, I had this perfect Monday planned out. I had hired a young person to come chop down my cacti. I couldn't have him dig it out because the neighbors gave it to me, so I have to just leave a little bit of it out. But I had this perfect day planned. I borrowed a truck, and as soon as I left the house to go borrow the truck, that didn't work out as smooth as I thought it should have. That person didn't do what I thought, they should have. They're lending me the truck, but I had these expectations, this vision, basically, of how my day would play out. And that was just the beginning of one thing after another, not quite turning out the way that I had planned. I got to drive from my house up to Telshore 4 times that day. I don't go up to Telshore very often, and I wasn't planning on doing it 4 times within a span of 3.5 hours. But that's what happened to me. But at the end of the day, as I was thinking, I realized that just by instinct, right, not even really thinking, I reverted to prayer. And today, my spiritual mind treatment template begins with gratitude. Boy, I am so grateful that I was able to find any person to come cut down my cacti. Boy, am I grateful that another person lent me their truck, even though I had to go and load. Oh, nope. Just grateful that they lent me their truck, right? Because, man, I can add a whole bunch of other garbage here on the side. I am so grateful that I got to go empty a truck by myself in sandals, right? Because I don't have to. I've never had to do that kind of work. But it just really shifted about what I mean, I have a friend who does a lot of digging over here, right? And I have and how grateful that I am that I have money to put gas in the truck that I had to drive back. But it wasn't till the end of the. And then in the afternoon, I had 2 commitments. Spiritual commitments, I guess, and I went to the 4:00 visit, and she ended up doing the spiritual mind treatment for me. I went there to help give her some lovin', right? To bring her some lovin', and I was just, but I received it. I was open. I needed her to bless me, and I got home at 7:00 that night. Man, it's all about changing my attitude, my thinking, not looking at the past, and sitting in gratitude. My last visit that evening was to the juvenile detention center, where I get to go talk to girls and learn from them, and be ever so grateful that today I've made different choices, and planting those seeds that they know there's something else out in the world for them. and just going home and just really being grateful. Being grateful. And remembering that my thought, even though I think I know how the day is going to flow, I also need to be open and to rely on that practice of prayer to take me to a different frequency that will only help to attract more goodness. And sometimes it's humility. You know, I need to be reminded of how much I have already, but yet how much I have to give out as well. And so affirmative prayer, spiritual mind treatment, the 5-step thinking process, as Mary calls it in her Dream Builders counseling. Well, that just went right over my head. So also on the other practices that I have learned in and out of religious science is on the bookmarker. Meditation, visioning, affirmations, mindfulness. You know, I lump those all together because those are things that I know when I go to on a daily or regular basis, my days are just different. They are different. If I want to stay in bed for an extra 30 minutes and then jump out and run out of the house with a cup of coffee in my hand and the dog's barking in the house, my day is different. When I'm willing to put in a little time, right? That's that knowing the principle, right? But actually putting it into action. Knowing these gifts, these practices are only going to bless my life. Like being willing to put the time in to do that. And I know when I'm vigilant about it, and other things, I try to do yoga. I do better when I do a little bit of exercise and get the blood flowing. Some other things that have helped to shape the life that I have today. And number one, I do want to add once again, just all of the teachers, peers, colleagues, and students I've had in this study here and inside of this building. Those are tremendous. That was a tremendous foundation for me to be able to learn how to rely on others and not think that I have to do everything by myself, though I know, as being one with the divine, that every answer is already within me. I just need sometimes some help to sort of flesh out those answers. But giving, receiving, sacred service as well. When I learned about tithing, my thoughts are really closed on that. That was past experience, right? That's what I brought to the table growing up. But today, and I don't have to know how it works, but the more I give of my time, my talent, and my treasure, the more I get. And it's not about thinking, right, like when I go do a volunteer gig, okay, well, I'm going to be there 2 hours, so that means somewhere in my life I'm going to get something in return. Like it doesn't work that way in my head anymore, right? It's about giving without expectation, and then I had to also learn how to receive. And I was reminded many times that by not being willing to receive, I was closing the door to flow. So that's been a big gift, learning how to receive and be thankful for all videos and emails that come my way. But for me also the grounding myself in gratitude. Gratitude. No longer looking at what I don't have, but how much I do have. And sometimes what it takes is to have to volunteer to speak and to prepare and look out at all of you as I'm up here to realize that I have a love that I love, a life that I love, right? That I take every day is a baby step. And this is possible not just for me, but for everyone. I also had to learn how to forgive myself first, and step out of the way of judgment. So once again, I mentioned this earlier. So I've always thought, okay, well, that's not working out the way I want it to. I can do it better. Get out of the way. Here I am. And then it doesn't matter who's here. It's just flowing out the way it's going to flow out. A little bit of humility. But I had to begin with knowing that whether I miss the mark, I always have the opportunity to change that because it's not bound by precedent. That I am able to change anytime I miss the mark. And that I move into that space of living in spiritual integrity for myself, as I know that it flows out into the world and it blesses more than I could ever imagine. And so I thank you all for spending your Sunday morning with me. I'm truly grateful because I now am in a different space with different ears than when I walked into this room this morning. And so it is.